Mike Vrabel said he was having difficult conversations with his wife. The conversation wouldn't be difficult if they didn't do anything wrong. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano, and this is another edition of Moving the Goalpost. You can follow us across social media at MTGPETB. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart and Johnny at Montalbano NY. You can watch all Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network, and you can listen to Moving the Goalpost wherever you get your podcasts, and make sure to like and subscribe. All right, so there's a lot of NBA news going on. The Trailblazers and Spurs are now tied, really just because Wemby got concussed in that game, which I don't know how long he's going to be out for. I know he's concussed. Is he supposed to miss, like, how much more of the series is he supposed to miss?
So here's the concussion protocol guidelines for the NBA.
Which nobody even really knows. We're not used to it in the NBA.
It's probably because we don't hear about concussions a lot in basketball versus the other sports. We hear about it a lot, obviously, in football and a lot in terms of as well as in hockey. And to an extent, baseball, which is why they created that 7-day concussion IL stint. But you don't usually hear about it in basketball because it doesn't happen a whole lot in the NBA. But here's the protocol guidelines. A player cannot return to full participation for 48 hours after the time of the injury, but can resume gradual activity after 24 hours as long as symptoms don't worsen. There's a bunch of benchmarks that, while being symptom-free, that player has to clear to play, and then he will require clearance from the team's doctor in consultation with the league's protocol director. Game 3, by the way, is, as this show is the night that this show is premiering. So we won't know exactly if he is going to be ready to play as we're doing this recording this week, Nick D. So we'll have to see. But it definitely felt like the game turned after the injury. And I went back and watched it, and it was a very unfortunate, freaky thing, really, with Wembanyama, because he was driving to the basket he's driving to the rim in the second quarter of game 2, and took a hard fall. I mean, he's such a big man, and then he took a hard fall and landed on his face. So that's where we are at right now as we do the show, and it's very significant because I had taken the Spurs to beat the Trailblazers in the series because Wembanyama is the best player of either team in this series. I mean, he is that massive, and not just in his size, but his presence and what he can do on the court in a multitude of ways. I mean, he won an award unanimously in the NBA awards. So, I mean, we know how great he is. He's lived up to the hype and then some. So this is a very, very significant thing. I mean, it's not a crazy reach to say that this could be a series-altering injury.
It can be series-altering, but here's how I see it. If I were to look at a bunch of different injuries and how it can be the most series-altering for a star player, the way I see it is that I think this might be the least altering. And what I mean by that is he's in concussion protocol now. The protocol is 48 hours. So he'll probably be able to play by the time, I mean, I might be wrong by the time the show comes out, but he'll probably be able to play on Friday night because that's going to be more than 48 hours. He's in concussion protocol now. I don't really think that it looks like, I could be wrong, but to me, it doesn't look like this will be series altering. I think Wemby will be fine. So if I were to rank how series altering any type of injury would be, I would rank this the least likely to be series altering, because ultimately I don't really think it looked that bad. I think it'll be in concussion protocol for 48 hours and then it'll come back and be fine. Like, that's what I think the most likely outcome of this is. It's nothing like those non-contact injuries to somebody's lower body where they're out for like the next year, like Halliburton or Jason Tatum.
That's fair. And also remember this: there's an extra a day in between games 2 and 3 because of the travel. So this concussion happened Tuesday night. Game 3 is as this show is premiering on Friday night. So he does have an extra day in that regard. And maybe, you know what, if you're the Spurs, you want to come out at least maybe with a split after 4 games. So if Wembanyama somehow doesn't clear Friday's game 3 and the Trailblazers take advantage of that and win game 3, it isn't the worst thing in the world. I mean, yeah, you want to. I mean, if the series really, we always say the series doesn't start until you lose a game at home, or you don't get concerned about that. But I think the Spurs team, though, is still. I mean, when Victor Wembanyama returns, and hopefully that'll be in game 3, if not game 4. I mean, his presence is so massive that that is what will elevate the Spurs. Maybe this will just be one of the longer series of the first round here in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think, look, I think the Spurs, look, when you look at like the West in general, I mean, I wonder, because I was looking at the odds on DraftKings, and look, the Spurs are a very good team. Wemby's a great player, but Oklahoma City is far and away above everybody in the West. If you look at the odds, the futures, Oklahoma City, since this injury, or at least I assume since this injury, is now actually minus 120 to win the finals. How many times do you see a team in minus odds? Minus 120 is unbelievable. They're literally the favorites over every other team combined. I mean, when is the last time you see a team in the first round of the playoffs as minus odds? I haven't kept track of it, but the last time this happened was probably like the 2017 Golden State Warriors. Like, that's probably the last time this happened.
That's what it feels like, because that's the last time I feel like we've had one team that has been this dominant against the rest versus the rest of the league. That's a very, very good point. I mean, if we were going to keep tabs on this stuff going back to like the 80s or 90s, I'd say probably one of the Bulls teams of the 90s would be the only other one. But I mean, like you said, first round, when we've seen a lot of craziness in just the first few days of the playoffs, is quite remarkable. But I've always felt like there's 3 tiers out west, and the Thunder are in a tier all by themselves at the top, and the Spurs, and maybe you can even say the Lakers, which I wouldn't have said until we've seen so far, would be in that second tier, and then there's everybody else. Yeah.
And you know, just another thing I want to talk about is the East a little bit. I think that I said this last week. The East is the conference that has a lot more question marks than the West. I mean, I guess the West has a little bit of question marks now because we don't know about Wemby's status, but that's a little different. That's just an injury. But the West is just like, all right, Oklahoma City's probably going to come out of the West, and they're probably going to win it all. Who comes out of the East is much more of a question mark to me, because none of us really know how to feel about any of these teams. The Celtics are far and away the favorite to come out of the East at plus 650. But we really don't know how to feel about them. They just got stomped. They just got got curb stomped. Well, maybe not curb stomped, but they did lose to the Sixers. That's not even at full strength at home last night. So we don't really know how to feel about them. We don't really know how to feel about. We don't really know how to feel about the Knicks, and we'll get into the Knicks, believe me, or the Cavs. We don't know, or the Pistons. We don't know how to feel about any of these teams. The Pistons are down 1-0 against the Orlando Magic. Like you said, the series doesn't start till you lose a game at home, and the Pistons lost to the Orlando Magic at home. And you know, maybe, and we don't really know how to feel about the Pistons because they're still a very young team, and sometimes the teams that are the best in the regular season, and sometimes it just doesn't translate to the postseason. A good example would be the 2015 Hawks. They were a great regular season team. They were at best an average playoff team, and that does happen sometimes, and there's a lot of reasons for it. So even though the Pistons were far and away the best regular season team in the East, we don't really know how to feel about them in the playoffs. So I think the East is like I said last week, it's a more interesting conversation. And the Knicks are now tied with the Hawks in what is just look, I don't know what's worse, the Celtics losing to the Sixers, not even a full strength Sixers team at home, or the Knicks getting cooked by CJ McCollum, who most people outside of big sports fans like us probably didn't know he was even on the Hawks until that game happened. And I just think this loss was for the Knicks was totally unacceptable. It was the Knicks were winning this entire game. And I think that there's a lot of blame to go around, just like with the Mets. There's a lot of blame to go around. I don't know who you blame the most, but I just want to say there's a lot of blame to go around for how the Knicks played in this game.
I agree. The roller coaster of emotions that this team has showed this year is insane. And these first two games were the prime example of that, because after the first game, you're like, wow, this is the game one is how it proves how the Knicks can be a finals contender. And then after game two, you're like, well, this just feels like just an average team that's just another average team that's playing right now. And it's just so frustrating about game two. And there's so many reasons why. Between Mike Brown's coaching, especially because you thought that you wouldn't have to deal with the nightmare coaching scenario from Thibodeau from last year. And that's all we were talking about in the offseason with this team was, we don't have to deal with the coaching of Tom Thibodeau, which was at times very, very suspect. And then your other problem was you put Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns back into the game in the fourth quarter with 8:56 left. And Brunson tried to do his part, and Towns did not. And we've seen that a couple of times in the playoffs with star players. And I don't know. I mean, I think Cat is a very important, valuable player. The star aspect is questionable. But what I'm trying to get at is players that are either very, very valuable or star players are fading in the fourth quarter. And whether it's them not scoring because they're not shooting well, or they're not scoring because they're not getting the ball, or a combination of all of that. We saw that in the Laker-Rockets series, just going back out west for a second with Durant, how he barely got the ball and barely scored in the second half in game two. And now look at the Lakers up 2-0, which has totally proven me wrong so far. But this is what frustrates the heck out of me, because the Knicks are a better team than the Hawks. And now you go down to Atlanta. I don't want to say game three is a must-win game, but if the Hawks go in there and they demolish or even just win ugly, it's going to give a lot of concerns and a lot of pressure to this Knicks team that was under a lot of pressure going into the playoffs because of last year, whether that's either from the fans or from the media, because a lot of the talk was, well, this team has to get back to at least the conference finals to be successful. If you lose this series to the Hawks and get eliminated in the first round to the Atlanta Hawks, who we talked about, CJ McCollum, and they have, I think, Johnson, but not much else on that team that you really know about. It's a disappointment. There's no other way to say it. And so I sit here right now as a huge Knicks fan, and I have a wide range of emotions because I've seen the sign that this team can compete and make a deep run, and I've seen the signs that this team could not get past the Hawks, and that's not an overreaction.
Yeah, and look, I think here's the thing with Mike Brown and Tom Thibodeau. I think Knicks fans were looking for that shiny new thing. In a way, like for firing Thibodeau, everybody who wanted Thibodeau fired. And what I think a lot of people don't realize, and I don't think this is typically true about football fans, because in football, everybody's flaws is very widely publicized. Like if a coach if let's say, I don't know, the coach of the Browns, whoever it is at the time, makes a coaching blunder or something like that, or any coach in the country for that matter, everybody hears about it. It's talked about everywhere. Everybody's kind of aware of it. But in baseball especially, but also in basketball, fan bases think when they look at mistakes or questionable decisions that their coach makes, they think it's only happening to them because it's not as widely talked about when other coaches do it. Maybe a little bit in the playoffs, but in the regular season, not really at all. If you're a Knicks fan and the coach of and they say Joe Mazzulla makes bad coaching decisions, you don't really hear about it. But but that magnifying glass is on your team and your head coach when they make mistakes. And that's kind of how Knicks fans were with Thibodeau. And I also think a lot of it was a little bit misguided too. Like, people were all obsessed with well, Thibodeau doesn't play enough of the bench. It's like, well, he also didn't really have that deep of a team. Like, sure, he had Miles McBride and maybe Mitchell Robinson could give you 20 minutes a game if you're lucky. But it's not like the Knicks had this deep roster and Thibodeau refused to play anybody. It's more accurate to say their roster is a little deeper now than it was last year. And I think that's what is Thibodeau supposed to do when you don't have a deep bench as it is? There's not much you can do about it. And now we're seeing that, look, I'm not saying Thibodeau was the best coach ever or anything like that, but every coach makes some questionable decisions. That will happen realistically, especially when you get to the playoffs. There will be times where you look at your head coach and think, what the hell are you doing? And if Thibodeau was as incompetent in game 2 as Mike Brown was, there would have been a much bigger outcry against Thibodeau than there was against Mike Brown. And one of the issues is that Towns was very dominant in the paint during that game. And the Knicks, I think, underutilized him. They could have used him a lot more. And one of the biggest issues I have with the Knicks, and this is true no matter who the head coach is. It was true last year too. Sometimes they're a little bit too reliant on Jalen Brunson. Sure, Jalen Brunson can be good in big spots. He put up 29 points. He also took 26 shots. He wasn't exactly an efficient he wasn't exactly shooting all that efficiently against the Hawks. And the problem was late in that game, it looked like the Knicks panicked and it looked like they stopped strategizing, and it turned into just get the ball to Jalen Brunson and hopefully he can get us out of this jam. And that just doesn't always work. It just doesn't always work. And it's not a strategy. It's not thinking. It's just panicking. It's just desperation. And you're not going to consistently win games that way. They've won a few times that way, but most of the time when the Knicks go to this mode of let Jalen Brunson take every shot late in the fourth quarter when nobody else touches the ball, they don't normally win. That's usually when things go south.
That we've been seeing a lot in the NBA is you need a second player on these teams. You don't the days of the big three are long gone, but you need a second. I'm not even saying a second star, but you need a second solid player. And right now, the Knicks, I feel like if they had a second solid player, then the rest of these guys would fit in great roles. I think that's the thing. Like you said, Brunson, the Knicks can't overcome an off night from Brunson. I mean, yes, he did score, like you said, he did score 29 points, but it was on very inefficient shooting. And he tried to do the part in the fourth quarter, but the problem was the rest of the team couldn't do it in the fourth quarter. And CJ McCollum was just on a mission in the fourth. And it's very rough and it's painful because when you have a double-digit lead in the fourth quarter of a playoff game at home and you don't win that game, that is tough. Now, that's not to say the Knicks can't overcome this because we've had this story with them all season long. And this is why we've had this conversation with this team where, like I said, after game 1, this team looks like a finals contender. After game 2, we're like, oh, they're just an average team. But how many times did we say that in the regular season and then they bounce back? We very rarely have seen them get on long slumps. They usually had long stretches of greatness and some minor slumps, but we haven't seen that very, very long stretch of them where they've slumped. And that would be, and I mean, it would be some epic time for it to happen here against the Hawks team where they are better at. Let's be honest, they are. But that's why I think they will bounce back. Maybe this series ends up being a little bit longer. I originally had it going 5, maybe 6. Maybe this is now more on the 6 side. But, I mean, the feeling that you're going to have if the Hawks win game 3, and depending on how they win it, is really going to be a concern for the rest of this series.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, if the Knicks can't get past the Hawks, which, look, they're still the odds-on favorite to win the series, that is just, that starts a much broader conversation. I mean, look, if last year losing to the Pacers when the Knicks were just objectively overachieved, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals, nobody expected that, just objectively overachieved. If they lose in the first round, even potentially if they lose in the second round, like that's going to start a conversation about the Knicks and how this team is structured and everything around, because losing to a team like the Hawks, who, by the way, it's unbelievable they're even in the playoffs. Like they were almost in like tanking or rebuilding mode from the moves that they made earlier in this season, and they were still able to make the playoffs. And it's not like the Hawks are this great team. They're an okay team that got a bit better after they basically went into rebuilding mode. Losing to a team like the Hawks, who it just pales in comparison to the Knicks in terms of talent, would just be totally unacceptable. I mean, even on the road, actually in Atlanta, the Hawks are actually slightly favored by 1.5. They're 1.5 point favorites. I mean, it's possible that game really changed the trajectory of the series. Yeah, but I'd have to say, I think that the biggest issue that the Knicks have is that they just don't have a championship caliber roster. I mean, sure, the coaching's an issue. There's a lot of blame to go around, but they just don't have a championship caliber roster. And they didn't have one last year, and they don't have one this year. I don't care if Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson's the head coach. They're probably not winning a championship with this type of roster in today's NBA, which is very competitive. I don't think they're good enough. I don't think their defense is good enough. I don't think the way the team is structured is good enough. I mean, if you look at Brunson and Towns, I don't think you can actually win a championship. Or, I mean, I think you can, but it's very difficult to win a championship when Brunson and Towns are your two best players. These are two guys who have a lot of the same weaknesses. They're both not good. They're both liabilities on defense at times. And it's especially a problem with Towns, who's a big man. You don't want to have a big man who's a liability on defense. At least Brunson's a point guard. And also, late in the games, they don't strategize, and they just give the ball to Brunson and think, well, he'll just get us out of this. Like that's from the way this team is built, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, that I think no more apparent to that than that desperation shot that he took at the end of game 2, which was a fadeaway shot that you could tell when he let that go that wasn't going in. Yeah. But I mean, you know what's going to end up happening is then we're going to go down this road in the off season. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I mean, we rather save that for when the Knicks if they get eliminated early. Is I feel like that a lot of the talk in the offseason will be, well, Giannis could be out there. Do the Knicks go get him? My biggest beef with that was I didn't want to sacrifice part of the roster to go get him. Again, this is a conversation we've had with the Knicks. The Knicks have built up all these draft picks for years now. You want to go trade all the draft picks in the world to get him? That's one thing. But when you start taking pieces that are still valuable on this team and being a part of it, that's where you run into an issue, because you can have all the talent in the world, but we've seen that depth is a very, very important thing. It's one of the things that hurt the Knicks when they got Carmelo. They definitely had a very valuable starting lineup, but the rest of that team was not good enough. And then we all know about the issues with the chemistry, and that's still a thing with this Knicks team that I feel like is still lacking a little bit too.
Yeah, well, you bring up an interesting point, which is Giannis. And I don't know, do you think Giannis wants to come here? Because Giannis is not like, I don't know, I guess he's very throughout this past year or so, he's been seemingly very purposely like leaving it sort of like leaving these sort of like not clear answers. Like I remember one time he said he loves visiting New York, and people were like, a lot of Knicks fans were like, oh, he loves visiting New York. He wants to play here. It's like, just because you're like visiting somewhere doesn't mean you want to live there or play there. I mean, look, I love visiting. Like, I'm sure a lot of people love visiting Jamaica, but they probably don't want to live there. Like, it doesn't really mean anything just because you like visiting New York. And it was just very unclear to me if he even wanted to come here. And also, just because you get Giannis doesn't mean you're going to be any good. Look at the Bucks; they didn't even make the playoffs. So you have to be very careful with trading away depth. I think Giannis changed my mind about the Bridges trade. The Knicks traded, what was it, 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. And he is just, look, I thought it was a good deal at the time because they were looking to make a move. and it did add some depth to the Knicks. But when it comes to the playoffs, he is just way too inconsistent. His whole role is basically to be a catch and shoot player, and whether or not he's ever actually able to hit shots is like it's just totally up in the air. And in big spots, most of the time he doesn't. And I just think those 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges was such a misstep, because you know what? I think that we could have used those. I think we could have used those. We could have used those picks on somebody like Giannis.
Or you could have gotten 2 players that were valuable with 5 first-round picks for that.
Yeah, 5 first-round picks and 1 second-round pick, so 6 draft picks.
Yeah, and remember, in the NBA, you cannot trade first-round picks and draft picks in consecutive years unless it's like a pick swap or something.
Correct.
Because I remember that with the Nets when they got Harden, and all those picks were dealt in that move. But yeah, just to go back real quick, what you were asking, I have no idea about Giannis, because my mind's changed on him several times, at least 5 times just this year. I mean, we all know about the rumors, and then the calf injury, which some people were thinking that maybe that was like intentional, but it happened right after the reports come out that he wanted out. That's why the Bucks are such a mess. And I think it'll ultimately will depend. And like we said, I think it'll ultimately depend with Giannis who's coaching that team next year. Do they get a Giannis guy? And we've said
they're going to fire Mike Brown after 1 year.
No, I'm not saying the Knicks are going to fire him. I'm talking about Giannis staying in Milwaukee.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
No, I don't think the Knicks are going to fire Mike Brown. I know.
I was going to say no.
They didn't bring Mike. They didn't do this just for Mike Brown to have 1 year. Now, Mike Brown had 15 wins this year. That might have been a different story. But they didn't do all these dramatic switches, getting rid of Thibodeau to bring in Mike Brown, and Mike Brown being gone after 1 year. I think that, especially right now with where they're at, I mean, it might make a seat a little bit warmer next year, but I don't think you make this kind of move for 1 year. I think that'd be silly. So,
yeah. But like, just with Bridges, just like, here's the problem. All he ever does is try to shoot from the outside. He doesn't do anything else. He like never even drives to the basket, doesn't try to draw contact if it's not working, nothing. And it would be one thing if he was consistently hot. I mean, nobody's hot all the time, but if he was fairly consistently hot, he's just not good enough consistently. Like, I don't like, the way I see it is that I think everybody in the offseason outside other than Brunson, I'd be willing to trade. Not saying guaranteed I'd want to trade, but potentially I'd be willing to offer, including Cat.
Well, if you were trading him for Giannis, Cat would have to go back in that deal for sure. He'd be at least one of the guys, but I'm sure they're gonna want like a Hart and maybe at least one other guy besides picks, and that's where you start. That's where you start getting to be a little bit concerning. See, it's not like Carmelo, because the guys they gave up in the Carmelo trade were really never panned out, and they had some role on the roster, but weren't not a significant one. Guys like Hart and stuff have significant roles on this roster.
Yeah, but I agree.
So,
but I can live.
That'll be If this is a first round exit for the Knicks, though, this is going to be one of the biggest talking points with them all summer long. Is about Giannis or any other star player. I can't even think of any other star player that'd be available for the Knicks to go get as of right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, though. I can live without Josh Hart. I mean, he has a significant role on the roster, but I'd be willing to trade him. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed to be a good deal. I mean, like I said, the only player that is untouchable is Brunson.
Oh,
you know what? I think Josh Hart's a little overrated. I think he has a decent role. He's also a shooting guard that possesses no shooting guard abilities. He's not a good outside shooter. If he has the ball a lot, he turns the ball over. He was a turnover machine last year against the Pacers.
Oh, don't remind me.
He can't consistently shoot, and he's a shooting guard. I mean, that's a little bit of an issue. He's more of a shooting guard that's the height of a shooting guard, that has the skill set of a power forward. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, I can live without him. Like, sometimes I really do feel that way.
When you put it like that, I get where you're coming from with that. These are some major decisions that this team will have to make after this year. But again, we'll see where they're at. by the time we're here next week, and we'll see, because they fall 2-1 down in Atlanta. It's going to be quite the rough stretch from to try and come back from.
Yeah, going down. Look, if they can even it out, and then even if they win it, like my prediction is that they win it in 6 games. If they tie it up at 2-2 and they can win it in 6 games, it's not really going to matter much anymore. It's going to end up like the Pistons series last year, which is that, like, everybody remembers the Knicks losing to the Pacers, but the truth is they almost lost to the Pistons. Like, it really could have gone either way, and they were very lucky that the Celtics honestly, I give the Knicks credit for beating the Celtics, but the Celtics also beat themselves in that series pretty brutally, and that's not going to happen every year. All right, can we go to the Giants? Your Giants, they traded Dexter Lawrence to the Bengals for the 10th pick in the draft. I like this move. I think I like this move. I think they had to do it. I think it makes sense for both sides. Here's why it makes sense for the Bengals. Their defense is a disaster. They lost Trey Hendrickson, which is going to make their defense even worse. I mean, their defense, the only defense worse than the Bengals last year was the Cowboys. So they needed something to at least make their defense somewhat workable. I mean, their defense is probably going to be awful, but at least it's going to be a little more workable with somebody like Dexter Lawrence than without him. And the Giants, they're in a position where they just need to get draft picks. Now, they need to make the right draft picks, but they are going to need draft picks because they're much more in rebuilding mode than they were. So it makes sense to me for them to want to trade Dexter Lawrence. It's not even like he did much for them when he was on the team last year. I mean, he was a good player, but it's not like he gave them a bunch of wins. So I think it makes perfect sense, actually, for both sides.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of when this deal happened Saturday night was it's a solid win-win for both teams. And first off, I'll talk it from my Giants perspective. I saw this go down, and the first thing I thought of was the 10th pick, and I was like, my jaw dropped because I couldn't believe they actually got the 10th pick for him.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you would have gotten a second rounder. See, the thing was, so we flash back. I mean, you can almost flash back to last offseason, because this has been 2 off seasons in a row. This with Dexter Lawrence, that he was talking about the roster, and then pretty much admitted he didn't want to be here. He was not happy with the direction the team was going, even though the Giants have seemed like everything right so far this offseason. He was just getting fed up about it. So my thought was, well, he doesn't want to be here, so the Giants just try and get rid of him. And I think it'd be important to the Giants to make this move. This was a move they had to make before the draft, and they did it about the week before. And again, for the 10th overall pick. Now, of course, we don't know as we're doing this what that's going to be. But, I mean, it did give them options where they could even trade that 10th pick down and get even more than just having the 5 and the 10. But it's a great move for them, because it shows that, they're in a no-nonsense approach here from Joe Shane. And John Harbaugh, definitely, you can tell the value, how valuable he's been so far. And then from the Bengals side, yeah, it's a great move for them. Now, I've heard from some people on the Cincinnati side of things that they're like, do you want to take that risk of having this player for 2? I know they gave him a 1-year extension, but instead of drafting a defensive guy where they could have 5 years of control over, to maybe getting Lawrence and having maybe 2 to 3 years of him. But look, this Bengals defense year in and year out has been amongst the worst in the NFL. In last year, we saw them giving up 30 points, 40 points like it's nothing. Your Jets scored 30
yeah,
points.
The Jets did.
I mean, that's not to knock them. It's just, how ineffective offense they were last year, but they were able to score on them. The Bengals scored, the Bears scored 47 against them. So, I mean, so many defense. And then Trey Hendrickson, who's another guy that pretty much has been wanting an extension or wanted out of the organization for a couple of years now. I don't know if Dexter Lawrence will replace the production that Hendrickson had, but this is a move that they needed to make. So I think it shores up a little bit. I think they need more pieces on that defense, because that team is still not fully set defensively. I think offensively, we know with Joe Burrow and company that they will still be competitive, but that team needs more on defense. But yeah, this is, I think, a true win-win from both sides. And again, for the Giants to really, a player whose production had come down the last couple of years that wanted out of the organization, the fact that they could get the 10th overall pick for him, I mean,
yeah,
went for both sides, especially from the Giants side, because the Giants roster, while it's shaping up, it's not there yet. I mean, this team still needs some more pieces. It's still a team that's going to have a challenging schedule going into next year with a division that is a true wild card, because as much dysfunction as there is with the Eagles and with the Commanders and with the Cowboys at times, there's still the potential that all three of those teams can still win that division. And I don't think the Giants are there yet. I mean, I like the direction this team is going at with getting Harbaugh, but I don't think, and because some people are going to say, well, look what happened with Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. I don't think it's going to be like that in year one. I think they will set the table for that, but there needs to be a lot that goes the Giants' way in 2026 to be like what the Patriots were this past season.
That's like looking at Bill Gates dropping out of college and being like, well, it worked out for him. It doesn't mean it's likely going to work out for you. Like it
can work out. It just won't be as successul, and it won't be as dominant as that. I mean, if the Giants get to 8 or 9, I mean, I'll be honest with you, the Giants get to 9 wins next season, I think that's a huge win. I'll be honest, I don't think if the Giants get to 9 or 10 wins, that means something dramatic happened in that division with either the Eagles, the Cowboys, or the Commanders just never rebounded.
Do you think, though, that like maybe Giant fans are expecting too much from the Harbaugh hiring? And here's why I say this. Well, there's a few things. First of all, the Giants are supposed to be better next year. Jackson Dart was a rookie last year. The difference between years 1 and 2 can be very big. It really can. Also, Cam Scatterbu got hurt. From the way he plays, there's a good chance he's going to get hurt again because he doesn't avoid hits. Same thing with both sides. I mean, that was one of the issues with Dable, is that he didn't ever try to he encouraged Jackson Dart basically like getting his head bashed in with a lot of his play calls. So I think that's an issue. That's a thing where I think Harbaugh is a smarter coach than Brian Dable. But also, let's not forget, like, he still had a lot of trouble with and wasn't able to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. Like, there's a reason John Harbaugh was available, and that's because, like, the Ravens moved on from him. So I think it could go in all different directions. I think some Giant fans are not overreacting exactly, but maybe have expectations a little too high with them getting Harbaugh. Like, he's going to change everything. I think certain things will change, and some of them have nothing to do with Harbaugh. Some of them are just Jackson Dart is going to be in his second year, and that might help a lot. Now, it could also go the other way around. I think it could, because there's also such a thing as sophomore slumps. And sometimes, when teams get film on players, on quarterbacks in particular, that's when they learn how to stop them. That's a thing too, I think. But I just think that some Giant fans are expecting too much. And you also just don't know what's going to happen with injuries and how good the division is going to be. I mean, last year, the NFC East was particularly weak because the Commanders and Cowboys both had bad years. Chances are both of those teams will have better years next year than they did last year. So, I think it really, there's just a lot of moving parts in sports in general that determine how good a team is going to be. Like, even with Harbaugh, don't expect to be a playoff team. That, the NFC is a competitive division. A lot of teams that weren't good last year are going to be much better next year in all likelihood, including the Lions, the Vikings, the Commanders, the Cowboys. Like I said, both teams in your division. I mean, if the Giants are an average team, which would be 8-9 or 9-8, that's not going to be good enough to be a playoff team, but that's still going to be markedly better than you were last year. So I think both those things can be true at once. I think Giant fans might just be expecting too much. Mike Vrabel's turnaround of a franchise does not typically happen. We might never see that again for the rest of our lives.
Well, the other thing I'll say with that, though, is I think also the media is doing that too. And we know how polarizing the media is when it comes to talking about this organization. I mean, it's either they're trashing them to no extent or they're giving unrealistic expectations with them. But yeah, just to go what you were saying, the schedule, the list of opponents the Giants have next season is why I'm also concerned about them getting into the playoffs, because they still have to play the entire NFC West, which has the Super Bowl defending champions in it, and the Rams and the Niners, who are still very, very good. They have the AFC South, which we know that division has the Colts, who, I mean, are a true wild card in all this, but they also have the Texans, who I think are still very dangerous defensively, and the Jaguars, who had an unbelievable year last year. And I think they're not going to have the 12, 13 wins that they had, but they're still got to be taken seriously. And they got to play the same finishers from the North, the South, and the NFC North, AFC North, which is the I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I believe that is the Lions, and the NFC South and the NFC North opponents. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head who that is. The South is the Saints, and
they might be much better next year.
And the AFC North, I'm sorry, so the NFC North is the Lions. The AFC North is the Browns. And the Browns are still dangerous defensively. So, I think 9-10 wins. And the rest of that division, true wild cards in all this. Because like you said, one key injury, I think that's ultimately what part of it was health, what derailed the Commanders in JV's second season.
And the Commanders
we don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why, I'm sorry, real quick, and I know we're doing this show before the draft and it's going to come out after the draft. But that's why I'm hoping that Jeremiah Love does not fall to the Commanders at 7, because that would be massive. I mean, Jeremiah Love is one of the two players I'm paying very close attention to, because there's so many mock drafts that happen going in 3 or 4 different teams. So I can't wait to see what happens with him. Obviously, if you watch this on Thursday night on the live stream, you'll see what happened.
Yeah, and with the draft, it's like, well, also with that division, like people talk about the Eagles being dysfunctional, and they are. But what happened last year when they were dysfunctional? They won the division. What happened the year before? Yeah. They were dysfunctional. They won the Super Bowl. It's not like they were functional all this time and then became dysfunctional and started losing. I mean, sure, they're dysfunctional, but they win. I mean, they don't win. I'm not saying I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they do win, and they won the division last year. And chances are they're still probably going to win the division, because even though they're dysfunctional, the fact that they're dysfunctional matters less than the weaknesses of all the other teams in the division. And you know what? That division could end up being very tough. It really can.
Absolutely.
And like, you know, if the Giants winning 9 or 10 games, I think it's going to be very hard for them to do that. I mean, I think it's I didn't like look at every single game. You said they're playing the NFC North.
They're playing the NFC West, the AFC South, and now saying we have the opponents. We just don't have the actual schedule. That comes out usually about I think they're saying between the 12th and the 14th of May.
Yeah. So if you look at all the teams that they're playing, the NFC South, I mean, that's an easier.
Well, no. So wait, let me just say this. It's obviously their own division: NFC West, AFC South, and then the same place finishes North, the NFC South, and AFC. Yeah, and the AFC South still has the Jaguars and the Texans, the Colts, who they're still got to be taken seriously. I mean, with Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren and stuff. I mean, they still started out 8-1 before injuries derailed them. 8-2, I should think, before injuries derailed them. I would have loved for the game against the Titans to be in Nashville, so I could have gone to it. But I mean, then they'll have obviously the ultimate revenge game with Brian Daboll and the Titans. But we'll see. I mean, I think at this point what you just want is competitive football from them. You know what? Like no stupid 37-10 games. I mean, they were, you know, that was the thing last year. As bad as they were, it wasn't like they were 0-17 and gave up 55 points every game. I mean, this was a team that was losing a lot of close games. I mean, against the spread, they probably were one of the better teams in the league last year. So, I mean, it's not like they were getting blown out and looking lethargic.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I think that with Harbaugh as the head coach, you're less likely to lose those close games than with Brian Daboll, who made a lot of boneheaded decisions. And a lot of people wanted to blame Shane Bowen because it was mostly defensive collapses. But Brian Daboll is also in charge of Shane Bowen, and he also approved of what Shane Bowen was doing. So if Shane Bowen is so incompetent as a coordinator, that is a reflection on Daboll in some level, because he's in charge of the coordinator. And also, but you also don't forget how many fourth quarter leagues John Harbaugh blew as the Ravens head coach. Isn't there some type of record that he holds?
It's I mean, it's been well documented how many huge double-digit leads he's had in the fourth quarter in his career, and that was one of the things that ultimately led to Brian Daboll's firing last year. Was he had 4 double-digit leads in the fourth quarter, albeit on the road, but still, nevertheless, in such a short period of time, and they didn't win one of those games.
So he has 17 double-digit second half. He's blown 17 double-digit second half leads during his tenure as the Baltimore Ravens head coach, the most by any NFL coach since 1991. So yeah, so here's the thing. I think he's going to be a better coach than Brian Daboll, but I think there will be a whole lot more similarities with him and Brian Daboll than a lot of Giant fans anticipate, because if he did that with the Ravens, with that team, don't you think he might do the same thing with the Giants?
Sure. And especially
and that's going to start conversations about him, similar to what they said about Daboll. Like, I know it's going to be messy. I think it's going to be messy because everything that happens in New York sports seems to be messy.
Yeah, I think they improved this year, but I think to say that this team's a playoff team in year one, I think is a little bit of a reach.
I think their division is going to be too tough. Their conference is going to be too tough. Even if they're an average team, being average in the NFC, I don't think is going to cut it unless they get lucky with injuries.
It's going to timing of when they play the teams next season. If injuries are bound with some of these other teams, that might be what ends up happening. And a lot of the time, I mean, it seems like every time in the NFL, timing is a big deal. So,
and look at the NFC North. I mean, there's a good chance that all four teams in the NFC North have a better record than the Giants. That could happen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Vikings ended up 500 last year, and they had some of the worst quarterbacks playing the league last year.
Yeah. So
Tyler's going to be playing he's going to be playing for a contract next year. So absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to move on to this AJ Brown rumor. So he's apparently, according to Adam Schefter, he's going to be traded. He's likely going to be traded to the Patriots because he's not getting along with Jalen Hurts, I guess, in that locker room. I don't know what it is with the Eagles. I mean, this seems like a common thing with the Eagles. Like everything, like even with teams that they win, there's always some sort of drama. I mean, whether you talk about Nick Sirianni or you talk about the Donovan McNabb era with Terrell Owens. I mean, I remember that like it was yesterday.
Oh, sure.
It's just a weird Phillies. They're a weird team in that sense.
It's amazing because Howie Roseman, as much as I can't stand the guy, I think is the best GM in the NFL. And really, I mean, the only thing he can't seem to get right is the coaching, but that's really not on him. But yeah, I mean, this is something it feels like it's been shaping up for a while. How many times have we talked about AJ Brown last year with the Eagles, whether he's like on the sideline reading a book, whether he's complaining that he's not getting the ball, the games where he has one catch for 8 yards. Patriots make a lot of sense because there's already rumblings in New England that they may be looking at having to deal one of their guys, like a Keyshawn Boutte or something down, because that he's not really that happy. So it does make kind of sense for AJ Brown to go there to the Patriots. And Schefter's reporting this will be a post June 1st move because of salary implications. But I think actually it's a good fit for both teams. Again, this would be another situation where it'd be good for both sides because the Eagles get rid of a headache and the Pats get a top receiver that I think is one of the things that they are lacking still is that true number one receiver. I mean, I think they got a couple of solid guys up their team, but I don't think any of them they have right now is a true number one. I mean, the Stephon Diggs did not really work out with them this last year. He had some moments, but nothing really special. Keyshawn Boutte's decent, but not a number one receiver. Just trying to think some of the other guys on the team. I mean, they've got two solid running backs there, but they're lacking a true number one receiver on that team, and they're going to try and get back to the promised land again. And fill some of those holes up. So I think it actually makes sense from both sides because then the Eagles get rid of a headache. And I think, honestly, they'll still be a very solid team without AJ Brown.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And a lot of this was like Dianna Russini was reporting a lot of this. And Mike Vrabel responded to the rumors with Dianna Russini, basically admitting the whole thing. I mean, look, I don't know. Look, when this story first came out, I was always hesitant to make any judgments because I always want to know. I'm somebody who cares about truth. I always want to get it right before I'm opinionated about something. But at this point, it's just like, yeah, there's really nothing you can really say to defend them and either one of them anymore because Mike Vrabel basically came out. First of all, not only did Dianna Russini resign, which of course she had to wait until after we recorded the show last week.
Of course.
Like, it wasn't bad enough that she's had like I didn't dislike her enough already, but
we're already trying to figure out what's gonna develop between now, whereas we're doing the show on Wednesday afternoon and Friday night. What's other bit of breaking news?
Something else. We don't know.
What do we had? Like 3 stories in the last month that have happened. We had, and one of them happened during one of our recordings. Whether the Max Crosby the trade happened while we were on the air.
Hey, at least we were able to react to it when it happened.
And then Hubert Davis. We were talking about Hubert Davis.
That was one.
He left, and then Russini resigned about a few hours, maybe a day before.
And the best part was that I also said on that show that I didn't think Hubert Davis's seat was that hot.
I remember.
That was the best part.
Because I feel like, well, there goes about 15 minutes of the show. But yeah, talking about this, I mean, I think Vrabel came out, and it was almost like right away during his press conference that he did that. And it's something he had to do. Look, I mean, obviously, Vrabel and Russini both pretty much admitted that they screwed up.
Yeah.
I mean, Russini was signing with that letter. She didn't want to go through it. Look, Vrabel's not going to get fired because of this. He realizes he was wrong. Dianna Russini is going to end up somewhere else. She's still too talented to not land.
She's going to get fired, but it's going to be – I mean, she didn't get fired, but she resigned. But she probably would have gotten fired had she not resigned.
I think that's where it was going. I mean, The Athletic is a very – they're an organization I feel like is a zero-tolerance thing. So I think she would have been out at some point there, maybe in the coming weeks or so, if maybe even more – if they both held on and more stuff would have came out. But she'll land somewhere. I mean, she's too – I mean, look, people land on bigger platforms doing worse. Now, I'm not saying what they did wasn't bad, but we've seen a lot worse things happen. We've seen people go to jail and come back and still being able to do stuff. So I think she'll land somewhere. And Vrabel had to do this. He said that he spoke to the organization, the players, coaching staff, his family about this. So I think he came out and admitted it. Which look. Nobody's perfect. I mean, like I said, when this story had broke, I felt like this was going to be this was a very serious thing, not only just from the professional side in terms of your jobs and stuff, but your families. I mean, these are two people in Vrabel and Russini that have a wife and husband, respectfully, and have children. So I mean, they have a full family.
Does Dianna Russini have children?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think she's got 2. I think I read she has 2 kids.
Okay, so
I
mean, I will say, in fairness, both of them probably are cheating. Although we also don't really know the status of their marriages. Like, they could be in the process of divorce for all we know for both of them. So it might not be public, but that's probably not the case.
Yeah.
But also, it's just like, Mike Vrabel's not going to have any. There aren't going to be any consequences for Mike Vrabel, but there will for Dianna Russini because. And we're talking about this on Lounge, and I don't know if you watched Lounge, but it like Lounge last week was like this past Sunday was like the Jerry Springer of sports shows.
Well, we need his presence to always be found after we lost him. What was it, last year he passed away, or 2 years ago?
Yeah. So
and a lot of those, and not to get off topic, but a lot of those shows are no longer on the air or coming back.
Yeah,
Maury retired, and Steve Wilkos' show didn't get renewed, so. You would have to go on old YouTube or like Pluto TV or something to still watch them. So
So last week it was like Jerry Springer. We were talking about Dianna Russini, and I was making the point, and like Nick and Callum were saying, well, why is Dianna Russini getting in trouble and not Mike Vrabel? And it was just like, because it's not the same thing. It's professionally speaking a one-way street ethically. Because Dianna Russini, I mean, the reason Dianna Russini is getting in trouble and not Mike Vrabel is because they have 2 different jobs and they're employed by different people. Like Mike Vrabel answers to the Patriots and the NFL. Dianna Russini answers to the Athletic and the New York Times, and she's a journalist. So it's ethically speaking, from a professional standpoint, a one-way street. It's unethical for Dianna Russini to have a sexual relationship with a head coach, which is pretty safe to say they probably were. I mean, Mike Vrabel said he was having difficult conversations with his wife. The conversation wouldn't be difficult if they didn't do anything wrong. So, like, that's just it's kind of obvious to me at this point. But also, Mike Vrabel is the head coach. It's not unethical professionally for him to have an affair with a reporter. It's just not the same thing. It's not like It's not the same thing as Sharon Moore having a sexual relationship with his staffer. Like that, like that's unethical. It's with a subordinate. So it's not the same thing professionally speaking. I use this example where, like, my friend is a broadcaster, and when he was in college, he broadcasted the girls' volleyball team, and he was told one rule: don't bang the players. And that's literally like I'm sure they told that to him, but they didn't tell that to the volleyball players because it's ethically a one-way street. It's a similar thing here. Like that's just like, to me, like I just think that's just so obvious.
Totally. I agree with everything you said. There really isn't much else I need to add to it because, like you said, the professions and stuff, two totally different things. I thought that was very telling also. That was the one thing when I was listening to Vrabel speak and just reading about it also online, was that phrase, that sentence you brought up about he had to have very difficult conversations with his wife. Because I think that pretty much proves that there was there was something sexual or something going on. So
yeah.
Because if it didn't have to be a difficult conversation, they were just hanging out somewhere, and that's sometimes though that's the thing. I mean, Page Six and TMZ are both very legitimate sites, but sometimes you can get these out of context, and I'm trying to say out of context. You can get these out of context photos and of people doing that. And what I mean by that is, well, they could just be holding hands like for 2 seconds at a time, but the other part they're with it, they're by their side just talking with one another.
Yeah.
So there are certain sites that will do that. TMZ and Page Six are not like that. So that was the biggest thing that I took away from that conference with Vrabel.
Yeah, it's also like when you look at some of the pictures, it's like some of them look kind of innocent, but others are like, yeah, it's a little hard to explain.
And there were several, so that's why it wasn't just one or two. I mean, there were several. I mean, if you were going through all that, and that's ultimately was the thing that I took away from that too. So
yeah. By the way, the Mets might be the only bigger disaster than Dianna Russini's career right now.
Yeah. She'll land against somewhere.
She'll land against somewhere. It looks like the Mets won't. She might get another job before the Mets win another game.
Oh, geez.
It might happen.
Well, again, this is another spot that maybe by the time this show comes out, maybe the Mets will have won a game.
Yeah, who knows? I'm not convinced. The Mets have been so bad that I'm not convinced that they will. That's the thing. Here's how I view the Mets right now. Nothing in particular that happened is surprising, but all of it put together, resulting in 12 losses in a row, is what's crazy. Like Lindor getting off to a slow start happens all the time. Now, my question is, why is Lindor consistently so bad in April? Like, what is it that he can't figure out in April that results in him being so bad? Like I just don't understand. Is he not doing enough in the offseason? Like, what is it that causes Lindor to get off to these slow starts? At some point, it's unacceptable.
Well, there's two things to that. Number one, Lindor he had that hand injury in the early part of spring, and maybe he's still trying to work his way back from that. And number two, there are players that just get off to slow starts and then they heat it up as the season goes on. I mean, that's why baseball is such a long year, because you can have a month where you hit 400 and get yourself back into it. I know Lindor's historically been like this. I remember Mark Teixeira, especially with the Yankees, he was always like that, where he got to a terrible start in April, and he still ended up with his pretty typical season numbers. I think sometimes it can just be mental too. Maybe you're told that you're all to slow starts and you press too much, but I think it's a combination of maybe mental and also the fact that he's still trying to work his way back from that hand injury, because he came back pretty much on the schedule that he was supposed to come back from that. But the other thing though too is, I mean, this roster is just terribly constructed. And if I had a chance to talk about it before the season started, I did not like the fact that they lost Alonso and Brandon Nimmo. And not only you lose them, but you replace them with some guys that, two guys that you're playing out of position. And nothing aggravates me more than when you try and bring in players and then play them out of position. And that's what they're doing. I mean, the Yankees had this problem too for a couple of years where they brought in these guys and were playing them out of position. I mean, you're playing Bo Bichette at third base. He's not a third baseman. You're playing Jorge Polanco at first base. He's not a first baseman. I mean, Alonso, for all the criticism that he was getting towards the end of last year, all the guy did with the Mets was play every single day.
Yep.
And still put up numbers that right now, the way things are looking, nobody on the Mets is going to come close to putting up those kind of numbers this year. And again, this is a long season, but there's nobody on this roster. A full year with Lindor and a full year with Soto would put up the numbers that Pete had, but that's still hard to replace. And then again, you have guys that play out of position. You have guys that are making mental errors, like we saw in the game on Tuesday night when Vientos throwing the ball on that bunt to third base, and he put like no oomph on it and came in late. These last two games the Mets had, both Sunday afternoon in Chicago and Tuesday night at Citi Field, were just taking it to a whole new level, where they had a lead, blew it in the ninth. They had a lead and blew it. They had a 1-0 lead in the ninth inning against the Cubs and lost that, and then lost that in extras. And they had a 3-0 lead with their best pitcher on the mound, and McClain gives up 3 runs, and then Devin Williams comes in and is a disaster. And also, you get the 3 runs from Lindor, and then it seems like you don't do jack the rest of the game. The last 16 guys were set down. This lineup has holes all over. They have guys that would fit on other big teams if they were down in the order, but not with this roster.
Yeah, and the best part was you forgot the cherry on top was Michael Conforto had the game-tying double.
Oh, Conforto and Pete Crow Armstrong as well.
Yeah.
I actually saw Pete Crow Armstrong play a game with the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, which is the A-ball affiliate of the Cubs. So right after when the Mets made that trade for Baez, I saw him play a couple of games with the Pelicans. So you know what? Minor league baseball is awesome because you see some of these guys and you never know, they'll be stars one day.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts down here in A-ball too, and he went from A-ball to the majors in a year. But.
And by the way, like Devin Williams, I didn't think Devin Williams would be this bad. I thought look, relief pitchers are so hard to predict. Like that, the closers in particular, like it's rare that you have a Mariano who is like just typically great. But relief pitchers are very, very up and down. They're very hard to predict year to year. Devin Williams was horrible last year with the Yankees. I thought he'd be better with the Mets. Because maybe I thought maybe it was like an Edwin Diaz situation where he was really bad his first year, but then he got it together after his first year in New York. And it looks like it's his first year in New York again with the Mets. And look, the move wasn't bad because they needed to make a move, and maybe all the alternatives would have been worse. As far as losing Alonso and Nimmo, now it looks like the Nimmo. Now it looks like it was an issue. The Nimmo trade was bad. Now it looks like that because he's at least hitting in Texas. If Alonso was still on this roster, we'd probably be in the same position. I mean, I don't want to say fallacy of a predetermined outcome, but he's struggling in Baltimore. If he's struggling in Baltimore now, he'd probably be struggling in Queens. So I really am not convinced he'd be having this great year and we'd be so much better. We'd just be spending a lot more money on the same crappy team. That's what I think if we still had Pete.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, no, that's kind of similar. Pete is now playing in an entirely new league. You would think, though, in the AL East, which is a very hitters-friendly division, and he's turning on too. Well, again, this is the situation, though. It could be he could get it going. I mean, he had some slumps also when he was in Queens. There's no doubt he was a very streaky player at times too.
It's not like you're saying that like he's in a new position, like a whole new situation, and that's true. But actually, it's not really unlike him for him to be hitting just above 200. He's had some pretty bad years with the Mets too. It's not like that hasn't happened.
Well, you're talking about average-wise?
Yeah, batting average-wise.
Well,
and,
for him, though, I mean, but see, here's the thing, though. For some players, though, I think you have to throw average out the window. I like for Pete, I know Pete at times was hitting second, but when you're hitting third or when you're hitting cleanup, I mean, it's more about your RBI total and your run total than it is really your average. I mean, now if he's hitting second in the order, which he was with the Mets for a while, then he would. But like when I think about Nimmo, when I was just going back to Nimmo, I guess his on base percentage was low the last 2 years, but and that because maybe you could think that the Nimmo trade, the Mets were doing this because his on base percentage numbers were dropping a little bit, but I think he still has 4 more years on that contract that the Mets extended him. So I could see why maybe you were thinking about making that move, but then you bring in a 35-year-old player as a result of that in Simeon. It's your homegrown guys. And McNeil, I know McNeil's numbers had flustered too, but McNeil was also a guy that
he was
very versatile. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I liked one thing I did like with McNeil is his versatility, and I think every team needs that kind of versatile player. But it's really hard to see them coming out of this because I think it's easier in baseball to have a team-wide slump than a team-wide hot streak. Because it's not realistic that every single player on the roster can have 3 hits in a game going forward. But it's easier for the entire 9-man lineup to only have 2 hits combined than it is for me to break out of this. So,
it certainly seems like it. I mean, he was okay on the Mets last year. He wasn't really great, but I mean, I don't really think losing McNeil was so much the issue. I think Nimmo, if anything, would have been and by the way, not having Diaz also really, really like not losing out on Diaz really killed the Mets. Although at least in that case, you can say, well, it's the Dodgers. They do that to everybody.
Well, and no coincidence, he pitches in the World Baseball Classic this year, Diaz, and then he comes back, and now he has another injury the year of the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, so
Juan Soto played in the World Baseball Classic. Guess what? He's hurt.
Yep.
I don't want to go down that road again, but Diaz will be out 2 to 3 months. But by the way, no coincidence, players playing in the World Baseball Classic, they're getting hurt.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. That's our show this week. We'll be back next week for another edition of Moving the Goalpost. See you guys then.
See you next week.